What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Drites Bro Sports Channel. Ethan here once again with another NFL week reaction. We are on week 7, reacting to week 7 here. Before we get into it, guys, please feel free to like the video if you find it entertaining and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. Please leave your comments if you have any start-sit questions leading into the NFL Week 8 and the schedule. And if you just have any questions about fantasy football, please comment. I will get back to you in the comments very quickly, depending, of course, on when you comment. I really like interacting with you guys as viewers and being able to help out and answer fantasy football questions if you have them. So without further ado, let's get into the video here. Starting a week ago, today was Thursday night football with the Broncos and the Saints. You guys who have seen some of my videos know the Broncos are my team. We'll spend a minute on this video just because it's the Broncos and I enjoy talking Broncos, but then we'll get into it. Broncos Saints, obviously you see the score here. Broncos easily win. I think this says more about the Saints than it does the Broncos. I'll explain here. Let's start with the Saints. The reason why I think that is because the Saints were down so horribly bad in this game injury-wise. It's really interesting. The Saints started off so hot this season, winning their first 2 games and scoring so many points. And ever since then, they've come crashing down to earth. And now they're dealing with a whole bunch of injuries, and they look like one of the worst teams in the NFL. In this game, the roster they had to put out there in this game was probably the worst roster in the NFL. So they easily lost. They looked awful. Spencer Rattler is not a good quarterback. Maybe he continues his NFL career and turns into something. I don't even think at his peak in the NFL he's ever going to be like a fantastic quarterback. He got destroyed by a really good Broncos defense. The Saints offense had nothing with no Shaheed, no Olave. They had missing linemen. Alvin Kamara could do nothing because the Broncos could just hone in on the run game. All around they're bad. The offense being a big part of it. Like we said, they started off so hot, and now they're just horrible. A lot of that is due to injuries, but even without injuries, they came crashing down to earth, and then they started getting hurt. I think it says a lot of that. The Saints offense is mid-tier, and then if they're going to be injured like this, they're going to be really bad. And then on to the defense. I think the defense, we learned a lot about the defense in the past couple weeks too. I think the defense is good if they have a respectable offense. They can be good. However, if they're having to carry the load as a team, they do not have it in them. They cannot get stops all the time. They don't have a good run defense. They're actually really bad the last few weeks with the run defense. They need an offense that's respectable and can stay on the field and put up some points if the defense is going to be able to play and look competent whatsoever. And even the special teams unit in this game, we never really talk about special teams units on here, but even the Broncos special teams unit outplayed the Saints special teams unit, which is something as a Broncos fan you can't say that often. So also something that kind of was a storyline, and you can see it on here, is Sean Payton goes back to New Orleans and beats his old team for the first time. I don't think that played a whole lot into this. I think it really was like the Broncos are more healthy, and they were maybe more motivated with the Sean Payton going back there, and Sean Payton had his team much more ready than the Saints were able to have their team on a short week with all the injuries. So the Saints down bad. I think if they get a little bit healthier, they can be a competent team. Maybe instead of having like a 4 or 5 win season, they can have like a 7, 8 win season. Don't really expect them to be like a true contender or anything. After the first couple weeks, I think it was more fool's gold that they showed us, and now that we're kind of seeing them come back down to earth and even below because of the injuries. So Broncos here. Like I said, I think it says a lot more about the Saints this game. However, the Broncos did go on the road with a rookie quarterback, and they took care of business. Broncos are overachieving based on, a lot of Broncos country's thoughts going into the season and Brian personal thoughts going into the season. I'm not a huge Bo Nix believer. However, I think Sean Payton and him work well together. I think Sean Payton puts him in positions to be successful, and I think Bo Nix is athletic enough that he can get away with a lot of like his inability to be a good passer right now. something that could definitely improve as the next season or two goes on. In this game, Bo Nix looked pretty trash. Honestly, he had some horrible decisions. The only reason why they look good is because they were able to run the ball, and that was a big part of Bo Nix's game in this, is he does look good running the ball. But, man, he's really got to figure out this passing thing within the next, I'd say, 15 games, 20 games, Broncos country is going to really start asking questions about him. The Broncos defense, as we mentioned, torched the Saints. The Saints could do nothing. Broncos defense even scores a touchdown in this game. With no Pat Surtain on the field, that's how down bad the Saints were, though. Is you talk about the Broncos defense torching a team and they don't even have Pat Surtain playing. The Saints just really had nobody in the game to really provide any sort of spark. I guess we'll get into some fantasy stuff here. On the Saints side of things, very quickly, you don't want to play any players on the Saints unless Derek Carr's back and healthy, and then you can really start to think about some of those receivers. I guess Alvin Kamara is startable in every game because he's able to catch passes, but you really just need Derek Carr to get him back in there if you want fantasy value from the Saints offense. For the Broncos, big thing in this game is you saw Courtland Sutton get 0 targets. Part of that's because they didn't really need to use them. Part of that's because Marshawn, I think his name's Marshawn Lattimore, was on Courtland Sutton a lot of game. A very good cornerback against a receiver who isn't very good at getting open off the line of scrimmage. Still like Courtland Sutton as a Broncos fan, just not a great fantasy value with Bo Nix as the quarterback. You really like to see Javonte Williams get going, though. So maybe uptick in Javonte Williams stocks, Troy Franklin stocks. Other than that, it's like, do people really want Broncos or Saints offensive players in their fantasy lineup? That really, like we said, we want Alvin Kamara. There's some value in Javonte Williams. If Derek Carr comes back, maybe you can play Olave, look at the matchups and play Olave. But other than that, there's just not a whole lot you like to see. So I know we spent a minute on that game. I like talking Broncos, so I don't want to spend too much of the video on that. We have a lot of games to get to. However, that was a great way for me personally as a Broncos fan to kick off Week 7 of the NFL season, Thursday night. That was great. Let's talk about the London game here next. Jaguars-Patriots, 2 trash teams. To be honest with you guys, I think these teams are both super trash, and they are super trash. I think the reason why the Jaguars win pretty handedly here is because not only are they going against another trash team and a rookie quarterback with like 1 game under his belt, so he was bound to not look very good, but they also were in London for 2 weeks now. So it was like really a home game for them, and they really got, adjusted to the London time zone and to being there, and then Patriots fly in later than them, and they have to get adjusted, and the Jaguars are already sitting there chilling. Obviously, really need a win. I think the Jaguars ultimately just had more weapons, more talent, more explosiveness offensively than the Patriots do, and that carried them to a win. Both teams are down bad. I would not be surprised at all if the Jaguars get no more than 5 wins this year. I would not be surprised at all if the Patriots get no more than 5 wins. Both teams probably going to be picking top 6, 7 in the NFL draft next spring. Patriots are big time. They're going to probably end up with Shedeur or Travis Hunter. They're going to get to pick. They're probably going to have a top 2 pick, and they get to choose. As I'm saying Shedeur, they just drafted Drake May, so maybe Shedeur isn't the move. Travis Hunter could be a New England Patriot. Maybe they like some other guys. It's still early, but horrible for the Patriots. Like I said, the Jaguars, while they may not win more than 5 games, Patriots may not win more than 3 games. So it's really bad. Their defense is even getting exposed for multiple reasons. They just have no help offensively. I mean, Hunter Henry, Ramondre Stevenson, emergence of Jalen Polk, like they have some talent, but it's just not anything compared to most other teams, and they can't move the ball. Fantasy-wise, you're excited about Hunter Henry. Maybe the Drake May being in there helps Hunter Henry's fantasy value. Ramondre Stevenson has a trash game in this coming off an injury. Maybe that has something to do with it, but I'm not confident in Ramondre Stevenson if I have Ramondre Stevenson on my fantasy teams. Other than that, you can't really start anyone on that team. Jaguars, I mean, you have Brian Thomas Jr., who's a stud. Christian Kirk just seems to be like he seems to be super content on being a very middle of the road to below average fantasy wide receiver. The emergence of Evan Ingram and like him being on the field and healthy hurts him. The mess in Bigsby and Etienne is a thing that we have to keep an eye on the rest of the season. I do think Bigsby's a more consistent runner of the ball, and then Etienne's like the more pass catcher out of the backfield, two-minute offense kind of player who has value in PPR leagues, but ultimately an annoying backfield there. So not like a fun game to break down. Every time I see a game that has the Jaguars or the Patriots in it and these reactions, I kind of just get like grossed out. Moving on to what should have been a more fun game, I think, but the the Falcons disappoint in this one. Seahawks take care of business, which in my opinion is a great win for the Seahawks. I think the Falcons are pretty good. I think they're solid. I think they have a solid defense, and they have definitely, as we know, some weapons on offense. So the Seahawks being able to go and win this game easily, I think, is a great win for them as a team that's like dropped a couple games here recently. Seahawks balled out. I mean, Kenneth Walker is a stud. If he's healthy, he's so good. He's like a top 5 running back in the NFL, maybe. Geno Smith is just so... He's like such a pro, and he's just so consistent and accurate. Man, I don't know what the Falcons were doing. We'll talk about this DK thing in a second. There was a play in this game that I think going into halftime, the Seahawks were driving, and there was like they had taken some penalties or something, and then they were like 30 yards away from the end zone, and there was like one play left on the clock, and all the Falcons needed to do was stop them from getting like 25 yards. Obvious passing situation, and the Falcons defense just lets DK Metcalf run 20 yards freely almost and catch like a little post maybe route and easily just falls into the end zone. And like, I don't understand how a team lets that happen to them. But that's like Geno Smith's playing well. Not a guy that I'm like super ecstatic about, but he's compared to like, think about like Patrick Mahomes in fantasy this year. Like Geno Smith's playing very well. He's a great player, fantasy and in real life. And maybe I was a little bit too down on him going into the season and through the first couple weeks, but he looked good in this game against Falcons defense that I personally respected. Respect a little less after this game, but the Seahawks have a lot of talent on offense. Like we mentioned, Kenneth Walker, Geno Smith was playing good. Then you got Jackson Smith and Jigba, Lockett, and then DK Metcalf in the passing game. So it's a great offense, and they put up points in this one. Like I already mentioned, DK having a great game. He did get banged up at the end of this game, and is week to week with some sort of like knee injury. I think he'll probably miss 1 or 2 weeks, and then he'll be back into the Seahawks team. It'll be interesting to see how the passing offense looks with DK out. I have a feeling that instead of the emergence of Njigba and Lockett, I think it's going to be just more Kenneth Walker. Maybe more Zach Charbonnet. We'll see how it looks, though, in the next coming weeks. I don't think the injury is serious at all, so they'll probably just be out 1 or 2 weeks without DK, and then he'll come back. Great win for the Seahawks. The defense looked better in this game. While I credit the defense for the Seahawks, we'll move on to the Falcons here. I almost think it could have. You could easily argue that the Seahawks defense looked good because the Atlanta Falcons offense looked bad and Kirk Cousins looked really bad. It's proven at this point of the season that the Falcons are best when they're running the ball, and Bijan Robinson looked good in this game. He got going at times, but they just were down ultimately in this game, and I think Seattle just had a good game plan, or Kirk Cousins just wasn't in the game or something. Like Drake London does good in this game, but other than that, Bijan Robinson has an okay game. Kirk Cousins looked pretty trash. I'm pretty sure he turned the ball over twice and threw a couple gross picks. Maybe it was just once. I can't remember. Oh, no. I think he threw a pick and then he had like a disgusting fumble where like he rolled out to his left and had to turn his body. And he just looked slow, and janky doing it. And the pass rusher got in his face and just like punched the ball out of his hands and they returned it. Or maybe he just recovered it. And that was kind of the end of the game there. Yeah, they just got put in a bad spot here and they couldn't get out of it. Kirk Cousins couldn't get him out of it. Offense did look kind of bad against what should have been a decent matchup with the Seahawks defense, but um, I'd expect the Falcons to bounce back. They're still 4-3. They're a good team. Just an ugly game for them. So it happens sometimes. Not too worried about the Falcons as of right now. Let's move on here. I would say last thing on that game, I was a little just disappointed in the Falcons defense. Once again, though, I'm sure they'll bounce back. All right, this game, not a whole lot to say in this game because it was a blowout. Titans get destroyed by the Bills. Could have guessed that. The Titans are another team that's going to be in the Shedeur Sanders sweepstakes. Probably a top 4 or 5 pick. I don't see the Titans winning more than 3 games this year. They're horrible. I will say their defense is respectable, but then you see the Bills put 34 on them. So, Titans, what's to say about the Titans? There's some stuff to say because DeAndre Hopkins got traded. That only negatively affects the Titans. They're essentially tanking. I mean, they're tanking without like coming out and obviously saying it, but if you see their moves and how they play and their record and all the above, you can tell they're just like a tanking, horrible team. They're trying to get a top 3 pick. Tony Pollard's a guy there that can rush the ball, but he got a little banged up in this game. I think he's totally fine, but Tajay Spears, I think, is coming back. So fantasy-wise, that's not going to look as pretty as it has the last couple of weeks. They're ultimately such a bad team, it's hard to play anyone on there. Calvin Ridley does not, in my opinion, get affected whatsoever after the DeAndre Hopkins trade. You'd think that they'd have to funnel the ball to him more, but I think their team and Will Levis and Rudolph are just so bad that even Calvin Ridley can't do anything. Wondering if Calvin Ridley's going to end up getting traded. I don't think contract-wise it's very easy, but that'll be interesting to watch through the next month. Ultimately, fantasy-wise, hate the entire situation with the Titans. Maybe their defense and matchups you can play. They don't have a tight end. Calvin Ridley's now the only offensive talent there in the passing game, and then you have Tony Pollard, but they're just so bad. So, moving on to the Bills, they get Amari Cooper. This was the first game with Amari Cooper, and Amari Cooper looked fantastic game 1. I think that goes to show how well he's going to be the rest of the season for you. Great pickup for the Bills. Fantasy-wise, he's going to be great. Bills looked fantastic in this game against a bad team. I don't really know what else to say. I mean, they got all the players. They're great. The defense is okay, not great, but they can hold their own for sure. And then their offense just has so many talented guys. Josh Allen's a stud. James Cook is a stud. Even their backup, Ray Davis, is emerging a little bit. They got Shakir and Coleman, who are okay receivers, but now they add Amari Cooper, who's that guy. And now their passing game is just like a huge threat with Kincaid and Dawson Knox. Their offense is just full of talent. I hope the Bills can make a little bit of a run this year. My goodness, I would love to have an AFC championship game that does not involve the Kansas City Chiefs. Can the Bills and the Ravens please just get in there and one of you guys go on to the Super Bowl? I'm so sick of the Chiefs. The Bills just... They have the weapons. They have the guys. Their defense is a little exposable, but my goodness, like... They're a solid team. They're so good. So, continue if you're a Bills fan and they're fantasy players. You know, you just keep starting the studs. I'll mention very quickly Shakir and Coleman. I think now that Amari Cooper's there, I'm super out on Coleman, and Shakir kind of remains the same. He's like very like mid flex play. If you ever need to play him in certain matchup, it's fine. I think Amari Cooper is going to get the targets now, though, for the most part, and the touchdowns. So, great, easy win for the Bills. Interesting game here. Browns obviously are terrible. Bengals are really trying to fight and get back into the season here. And so it was a must-win for the Browns. obviously a divisional game, so it's kind of hard to like say too much about it. Like you never know how these divisional games are going to end up playing out. I am disappointed a little bit as a Bengals fan that you guys like struggled to beat the Browns. Like the Browns are so horribly bad, and we'll talk about it a little more, but I'll mention it now. Like Deshaun Watson went down halfway through the game, and you guys still only won by a touchdown. Not a great look for the Bengals, but you take a division win anytime, anyway, and you don't complain much about it. I'm just kind of looking at it as like we already don't really trust the Bengals. The Bengals have looked pretty iffy through the first 7 weeks. They have a losing record still. You need to see something more than like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins every now and then making big plays. Like you need to see some more consistency. I don't know how it's going to happen. Maybe the defense needs to get a little better. Maybe the running game needs to get going more, even though Chase Brown does look good. Just need to see more to be confident in the Bengals. Like I would like to put them up there with the Bills and the Ravens and the Chiefs, but they just are not even close through 7 weeks. Fantasy-wise for the Bengals, you still start Chase Brown, T. Higgins. You still are looking forward to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and you're still looking forward to Chase Brown in the backfield. Other than that, like Joe Burrow's startable for sure, but you don't like their defense in most matchups, and there's not much else there unless there's injuries. So the Browns here, like I mentioned, awful game for them, not only because they're a bad team and they lost the game, but they lose their starting quarterback to an Achilles tear, which is unfortunate for them. It is interesting to me, though, because I know, we all know Deshaun Watson's off the field antics and how ridiculous he is, essentially. It's just to put it like in a neutral term. But him getting hurt in this game, and I from what I've seen and heard, is there's a lot of fans that were like cheering that he was hurt. And I get it, but man, that's a tough place to be as like a Browns fan. Oh, like now who's your quarterback? Jameis Winston? I mean, I guess, yeah, I would have rather had Jameis Winston go in there from an outsider the last couple weeks myself as well. Whew, that contract situation with Deshaun Watson now is out for a season. Maybe ends his career. That's crazy. Why did the Browns give him that contract? That's just what it comes down to. The Browns organization, your joke. That's ridiculous. Yeah, have fun with Jameis Winston the rest of the season. Ugly. They trade away Amari Cooper, of course. They're on to Jerry Jeudy and Njoku and Cedric Tillman, who looked good in this game, the youngster. Nick Chubb is back, so maybe there is like some hope just to have like something to look for the rest of the season, but it's just so clouded over by Deshaun Watson being on your team. Now he's super injured in the contract. It's like, are you guys ever going to be good? They do have they're probably going to end up with a top 4-3 pick, though. So which way does that go? Quarterback probably, Shedeur Sanders, Ward, Hunter. I don't think they get Travis Hunter, but they definitely need another receiver. They probably need a quarterback and try to get out of Deshaun Watson's contract as soon as they can. Ugly week for the Browns, nonetheless. Maybe some people look at it as it was a great week because they hated Deshaun Watson. However they want to look at it, their team still is horrible. So, moving on here. One of the more fun games of the week, two great teams in the Texans and the Packers. I enjoyed seeing highlights and watching stuff from this game. I thought this game was awesome. You could just tell it was two teams that were competitive and good, and they were battling it out. Physical, both teams were playing their heart out. Both teams wanted to win. It almost looked like a playoff game, and it was really, really fun to watch. So, shout out to the Texans and the Packers, both great teams. Packers squeak out the win with a Brandon McManus, who they just signed, kicking like a long field goal. I'm pretty sure it was like 40-something yards, maybe low 50s, and nails it. So, as a Broncos fan, I know a lot about Brandon McManus. That was clutch kick after they had to replace their other kicker who was just missing left and right. So, clutch kick for the Packers. The Packers, both teams looked good. Like I said, both defenses are good and competitive and physical. Both offenses are talented and competitive. This just was a good game all around. Fantasy wise, you continue to start all the normal names. Nothing crazy in this one. I will say the Dobbs coming back in the lineup has like essentially, how do I want to say this? I think Dobbs coming back in the lineup is great for the team, but fantasy wise, if you're like a Jaden Reed guy or a Wicks guy, they're all just gonna like cancel each other out. One game, one guy will do great. The other game, another game, one guy will do great, and the other guy will do bad. Or one game, one guy will do great, one guy will be mediocre, but he caught a touchdown, and one guy will do nothing. That's kind of what we saw in this. Still Jaden Reed, number one. I would say Dobbs, number two, because he's come back and catching touchdowns and getting targets. And then Wicks, number three. Christian Watson, number four. I will say highlight is the tight end Tucker Kraft. He had a sick touchdown catch in this game. Sweet catch in the end zone. Josh Jacobs' game, he catches his first ever touchdown pass, first ever touchdown reception. And he finally kind of has a somewhat of a breakout game against a good defense. So shout out to all of us Josh Jacob owners in fantasy. He looked really good in this game. I think he looked, from what I've seen, like the most explosive and the best he's looked all season. So keep it up, Packers. You guys had a great win here, and you guys are another team that should be in contention for a playoff run. So Texans, you're missing out on Nico Collins. You missed Nico Collins. This is probably a game you can win if you have Nico Collins. Tank Dell really doesn't. I don't think Tank Dell caught a pass in this game. I think that says a lot about the defense. I think Tank Dell's going to have a bounce-back game in Week 8. But, man, right when Nico Collins gets back in that lineup, I'm out on Tank Dell. Like, he's just not getting it done this year. And it makes sense because he's coming off an injury. But, like, it's something weird. They're just really like Diggs is getting all the targets. They're really trying to utilize the run game with Mixon, who had a great game in this one as well. Would have thought Tank Dell would have been doing better though without Nico Collins. We'll see what happens this next week. Maybe he does have that breakout game against in a good matchup, but excuse me. Not exciting game for Tank Dell. Like I said, Diggs is doing good. Mixon had a great game. CJ Stroud struggles. He just doesn't get a lot of rushing yards. So he's kind of in that same mixture with like Patrick Mahomes, where if he's not throwing touchdowns, he's not going to get you any fantasy points. And they're relying on Joe Mixon in the run game so much that CJ Stroud has been kind of limited as of late. So some good matchups coming up. When Nico Collins gets back, it'll get back up there a little bit in production, but so far, stick with it. Don't overreact. Still a fantastic team. Overall, I'm more like, it feels weird talking about the fantasy implications in this game because I think it was just more of like a good real life game and it was a fun game to watch that it was just like, this was probably easily one of my top two favorite games of the week. And although I'm a Broncos fan, like if the Broncos aren't going to win, then I'm rooting for like the Packers. I'm rooting for the Texans. These are two teams I like. So let's go ahead and move on to an opposite game. Let me take a drink of water real quick. An opposite game here as far as like fun watching it. Dolphins and Colts play each other. Colts squeak out a win with Anthony Richardson in the game. Definitely fun to talk about this game because we need to talk about the Colts real quick with Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson's bad. And I honestly knew that going into the season. I didn't understand the hype about Anthony Richardson. I know he looked decent in his very limited workload last year before he got hurt. And I know he's like a running guy. He can't throw. I've compared him to Cam Newton before, and Cam Newton was like that physical running type quarterback who found a lot of success. Anthony Richardson, if he continues to run like he does, he's going to continue to get injured. And now you're just kind of stuck with a guy that like if he's not going to be super successful running the ball all the time, then he's just going to be bad because he's not a good pocket passer. He's not a good passer. He just has a big arm. And so as a Colts fan, I'm really nervous about that. if I want to win games this season, which you're 4-3, I'm trying to get into the playoffs. I'm playing Joe Flacco. I know it's going to be a bad look, but like Anthony Richardson just needs more time to like develop as a passer before he's going to be able to win you games. He looked horrible in this game. And in result, all of the receivers, fantasy-wise, did nothing. Essentially nothing. You're excited for Jonathan Taylor to come back. But, man, fantasy value-wise and in real life, I think the offense looks so much better with Joe Flacco. So if that's not going to happen and Anthony Richardson's going to stay in there, you would just have to kind of hope and pray that he starts to figure it out. But he looks horrible. Maybe some of that's to do with his injuries he's been battling, but I think it's more just he's not a good passer. He's not an accurate passer. He's not a consistent passer. He has a big arm and is a physical guy who can run. Other than that, I'm like, you're not going to win. You're not going to make deep runs with that unless you're prime Cam Newton with a lot of good weapons around him and a fantastic defense. The Colts are not that. Moving on to the Dolphins. The Dolphins are essentially were trying to survive the best they could until Tua gets back, and it sounds like he's coming back this week, week 8. This was this last game without Tua, it seems like. The offense is atrocious or atrocious? For some reason, I don't know the word right now, but you guys know what I'm saying. It's horrible. No, it's atrocious. Yeah, the offense is atrocious without Tua. We'll see what it looks like when Tua's back. It's definitely going to look better, but he needs to stay healthy, and I wasn't super convinced by them while Tua was in there for the first game and a half to start the season. I just don't think the Dolphins are all that good. Now, when Tua gets back, they're definitely going to look better and have a lot better chances to win games. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, the passing game, and none of the offense has done anything since Tua has been out because their threat to pass is nothing without Tua in there. And then defense is going to just focus in on the running game, and Devon Achane can't do anything with that if that's happening. So they survived-ish. I mean, they're 2-4. They're going to have to start rattling off some wins through the second half of the season here. But if Tua's in there, they have a chance. Mike McDaniels is the guy that really needs Tua to come back and look good now, because if that doesn't happen, then Mike McDaniels is on the hot seat because he's looked horrible without his quarterback the last few games. This was going to be one of those games where, like, if the Dolphins won, it would have gone a long way for their season, because not only was it I know this makes me sound horrible, but are the Colts and the Dolphins in the same division? I don't think they are. So I can't say it was a divisional game, but they just needed to like survive and get one more win, and be 3-3 with Tua coming back feels a lot better than 2-4. So hopefully the offense starts looking better. The defense is injured a little bit and not very good. So Dolphins down bad. However, they got hope now. Tua's coming back. It would be a storyline and a half if Tua came back and led this team to a playoff berth. So hoping for Tua. I'm a person who likes Tua and don't necessarily think he's amazing, but I think he's a good quarterback, and I hope he finds success coming back. Obviously, his concussion was scary. All right. Now, I said the Texans and the Packers game was probably for top 2 best games of the week. This is the best game that happened this week. This was one of the best games of the season. Lions and Vikings here. Man, I watching a lot of stuff on this game this weekend as well. It was so fun to watch and see what happened. I mean, I don't even know where to start here. Lions squeak out a win in a nail-biter against the Vikings here. On the road, fantastic win. Vikings played their heart out as well. Can't take anything super negative away from this game. Let's start with the Vikings. Sam Darnold, some injuries happen in this game, battling injuries. Gets injured, comes back into the game, just battled, played well. Another game where like both defenses are respectable, both offenses have so many talented guys. It was just an awesome, awesome game, man. I really enjoyed watching it. Both sides of the ball, both teams, fun stuff. So, Justin Jefferson has a good game. Let's pull up the box score for the first time this week. I want to look at some of this stuff. Yeah, Sam Darnold, he plays good. I mean, he throws a pick, a costly pick, of course, but he completes a lot of his passes, gets a touchdown pass. The running game looked good against a team that has a great run defense in the Lions. Aaron Jones is looking so good. He's looking like prime Aaron Jones right now. Justin Jefferson has a great game, of course. Jalen Naylor's catching some big passes. Jordan Addison's back and healthy. TJ Hawkinson, they need another week or two, but he's going to come back within the next couple of weeks. Great game by the Vikings. They just get barely beat, and that's what happens in close games. That's why we love playoff football, for example, is because you just never know what can happen. Both teams can play their best, play their heart out, and it just comes down to like one fluke play, and then it goes one way or another. So Vikings, heartbreaking loss. However, you guys played your heart out, and you look like a fantastic team. Moving on to the Vikings here. Or not the Vikings, sorry. I'm standing up to try to do some stuff here. Moving on to the Lions. The Lions looked, again, really good. They almost blew the game. So Jared Goff played fantastic. They had no. Jameson Williams was in this game. He just got suspended after the game. So Jameson Williams did nothing, which is interesting to go back and look at. Jameson Williams did nothing. I think they really just tried to beat up the Vikings defense and run the ball a ton, and they did. Jahmyr Gibbs looked like a baller in this game. But even when Jahmyr Gibbs isn't getting the ball, David Montgomery looked good. I will say, though, David Montgomery almost blew the game because he had a fumble late in the game, and the Vikings went and scored off of it. So the kicker bails him out, but, man, crazy game. It is an interesting thing fantasy-wise that you don't see Sam Laporta doing anything in some of these games. The game script's positive. I don't know what's going on. I think it was more of a Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown game, and I think that's what they want to do typically in most games is have those three guys get the ball as much as possible. So, Lions defense gives up some points, but they do have a lot of playmakers on the team. There's a moment there where they thought they had a fumble recovery for a touchdown. It was just a crazy game overall. Nothing super negative. Like I said at the beginning of this game, both teams are great. Shout out to the Vikings, and I remember watching the game and being like, I'm going to do my reaction and have to just shout out the Vikings coaching staff like crazy because, obviously it would have been better if they won, but the Vikings coaching staff is legit. The fact that they have a guy in Sam Darnold looking as good as they do and being able to have as much success as they have through the first 7 weeks of the season being 5-1. Their defense is solid. Like there's some coaches there that are just coach of the year type of guys who deserve some credit. So fantastic game against two good teams and two good coaches, or two good coaching staffs. All right. I know this is a little longer, but I'm having fun talking, so we're gonna keep trying to do our due diligence on some of these games or these matchups. As I say that, we're going to a trash game here between the Eagles and the Giants. Not trash on the Eagles' part. The Eagles played fine. They played well. It's more trash on the Giants. I mean, they had Malik Neighbors back, and they just still could not do anything. I don't know why the Giants, not saying that it would have changed the outcome. I mean, they just weren't the better team, but I don't know why they have Devin Singletary ever in the game. I mean, Tyrone Tracy's simply so much better. Devin Singletary should be getting like 25% of the offensive snaps, and Tyrone Tracy should be getting the rest. Maybe that's something they're working towards. The Eagles do have a great run defense, so maybe that plays a part in how it looks this game, but they could just literally not move the ball at all. I'm pretty sure the Eagles had like 8 sacks in this game. Malik Neighbors doesn't do much. Wan'Dale Robinson does literally no one they scored 3 points. No one on the Giants did anything. Their quarterback, as we know, sucks. Unless the defense they're playing against is just horrible, they're just not going to be able to do a whole lot because their quarterback's bad. Daniel Jones is bad, as we all know. Although there's some talent on the offense, I think the quarterbacks is just so hindering. And if he gets stopped in any way and they can't run the ball at all, then they're just screwed. So, horrible game for the Giants. The Giants are going to get a top 8 pick this year. Once again, I'd be surprised if they win more than 5 games. So, maybe that's a team that needs Shedeur Sanders. Like, if they finish the season and have, like, the 5th pick in the draft, they need to trade up to, like, 1 or 2 and make sure they get him. The Eagles, I mean, the Giants are a respectable defense, so it wasn't like anything crazy from the Eagles, but the Eagles are just good enough where they just kept going out the Giants and they started to break them down slowly but surely, and they easily win. So Jalen Hurts gets into the end zone rushing. He throws twice, actually. He gets in the end zone rushing. He throws a touchdown pass. He only throws 14 passes. That's how easy it was for the Eagles to win this game. Even with a good Giants defense, the offense was so bad that the Eagles just had the ball so much. Saquon Barkley breaks so many runs in this game. I think he had like 3 30-plus yard runs in this game. He's just a beast. He's insane. A.J. Brown comes back and has a fantastic game. Devontae Smith comes back and does absolutely nothing. Part of that's because they didn't need him to do anything at all. Part of that is because I think they just needed to remind us that A.J. Brown's the alpha and Devontae Smith is the 2. So, unfortunate for fantasy managers who have Devontae Smith, but I'm sure he's going to bounce back next week. I know for a fact. I play against him in my main home league, Devontae Smith, and I just know the matchup looks pretty good. I think Devontae Smith is going to have one of those like 7-catch, 89, 90-yard games with a tutty because A.J. Brown had his game last game. Moving on here, Raiders and Rams. I don't really. It's kind of tough. I like the Rams, and I obviously am not a Raiders fan, but this Raiders just aren't good, and I don't think the Rams are that good either, and that's why it's close. So, Rams ultimately end up winning. I think they looked pretty good on the ground. Kyron Williams does his thing. They are getting Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back in this Thursday night game tonight that's going to start in about an hour. So we'll see how they look. That should be a great boost for their offense. So maybe the Rams are able to figure something out, but there's also a lot of trade rumors around their team right now. So we'll see how it plays out. Not super confident in the Rams, but you guys have some potential to make a little run and maybe find your way into a playoff spot in the NFC. So we'll see. Not super excited about their defense. Their offense is good if they are all healthy. They haven't been all healthy, so we'll see what they look like as they're starting to get healthy. They only beat the Raiders by 5. As we said, Rams weren't that healthy. The Raiders are bad, though. So really nothing to take away from the Raiders team. They score 15 points against not a very good team. They're down horribly bad. Their quarterback situation, they traded Devontae Adams. They have no help receiving-wise. I think the only bright spot as a Raiders fan is Brock Bowers is probably going to go down as your guys' best tight end of all time. He's legit and he's a great player. He's just not enough to carry them into anywhere. Another team that I would be surprised if they win more than 5 or 6 games. That was a quick one. Let's move on, though. This will be a quick one, too. My goodness. Panthers get absolutely murdered by the Commanders. Commanders are so good. Jane Daniels does get hurt in this game, but Marcus Mariota, out of all people, comes in and seems like he's just as good as Jane McDaniels. I mean, more flukish and more of the matchup. The Panthers are that bad that they made Marcus Mariota look like Jane Daniels, but keep an eye on Jane Daniels' injury. It sounds like he's going to maybe miss this next week, but it sounds like he has bruised ribs, so he's probably going to miss a week, max 2. He'll be fine. Commanders look fantastic against the Panthers. I think most teams look fantastic against the Panthers. I think the Broncos, as I'm the Broncos fan, they play the Panthers in week 8. I think the Broncos should look fantastic against the Panthers, and if they don't, just a little sneak peek to week 8 reaction. If they don't, I'm going to be going off against on my Broncos in week 8 reaction if they don't look good against the Panthers. But yeah, shout out Commanders. They're a great team. Dan Quinn, coach of the year, maybe. Worried about Jane Daniels a little bit, but it sounds like he has bruised ribs, so he should be fine. The running game there is just so elite. They haven't even really had to use Brian Robinson all that much over the last 2 to 3 weeks, and he's still not only putting up fantasy production, but like they're still running the ball like crazy with their other backs. So, I mean, obviously the rushing game is taken to the next level with Jaden Daniels in there, but Commanders are just solid. You can't take too much away from a game that they play the Panthers, but they easily won, and they did their job very well coached. Panthers are trash. We know that. Not a whole lot to say about them. We'll see if any of the receivers get traded in Deontay Johnson or Thielen at the trade deadline. The Panthers definitely should be trading guys. They need to tank. They really need the first pick. They needed to be the team that gets Shador. They need to be a team that gets Travis Hunter. They need to be a team that gets Cam Ward or one of these guys, you know. Andy Dalton going into week 8 is not playing, so we'll see how Bryce Young looks against the Broncos. Not expecting him to look good. He's a bad quarterback as of right now in his career, so you never know for sure what's going to happen week to week, but Panthers are looking like they're down really, really bad. I think the biggest thing with them is the trade stuff. We'll see if they trade any of their receivers, and then we'll see what it looks like when Jonathan Brooks is getting snaps in that offense. As we talked about in other reactions, though, they're so bad, I would almost just save their young guys like Jonathan Brooks for next season and just give him very little work this year because they're not going anywhere. I'd be surprised. This is a team I'd be surprised if they win 3 games. So that's how bad it is in Carolina. Moving on, don't want to beat down on Carolina over and over again throughout the weeks too much. So let's move on. Chiefs and 49ers, of course the Chiefs win. They just look horrible offensively, and they just continue to win games pretty easily too. And they're just fantastic, and I just have to come on here and say it every week. I was thinking, though, why can't the 49ers ever figure it out? Like, you guys are good enough. Why can't you ever just beat the Chiefs once? Ever. You can never beat them in the playoffs. You can never beat them in the Super Bowl. Like, you can never beat them. You just get smoked at the end of the day here. And it's annoying. So I was definitely rooting for the 49ers. Doesn't happen. 49ers are also still banged up. I mean, George Kittle is battling stuff. Brandon Ayuk out for season, which is the biggest storyline, I think, of this game. Deebo Samuel's been fighting pneumonia. I don't think he played in this game. Even Jahan Jennings was out of this game. So they just had a hard time moving the ball. I think the Chiefs' defense is just good enough and smart enough that they realized that they were down bad. They just stuffed the run. Jordan Mason couldn't get going, and Brock Purdy doesn't have enough around him to carry them. So they just couldn't get it going. Sad to see Brandon Ayuk with an ACL injury out for season. Tough for fantasy managers who have him. A lot of work coming for Deebo Samuel, Jahan Jennings, maybe Ricky Pearsall, who saw his first snaps, who saw his first snaps this past weekend, and then we'll see if Christian McCaffrey gets back within the next few weeks. So 49ers being 3-4 is horrible for their standards. However, it's one of those teams that I'm like so not worried about at all. They're going to find their way in the playoffs for sure unless drastic things continue to happen to them. I will say their defense is underachieving. So is their offense. Their whole team is underachieving. And it's not like it's just because they're hurting and they can't hold on for a whole game, especially against some of these good teams that they're being asked to play against. So hopefully they start to get healthy and then start to bounce back as a 49ers. Is like if you're a 49ers person. And another team that I like and would be totally fine seeing in the playoffs and doing well in the playoffs. Moving on to the Chiefs, they still just are horrible offensively. Patrick Mahomes continues to just do nothing. Everyone's like, oh, he ran over a guy, though, in this game. But that's literally the only thing he did all game. They couldn't do anything as far as him throwing the ball. They were able to run the ball. They're just committed to running the ball with Kareem Hunt and like their college level running backs that they have on the team right now, and it works because this is like the epitome of like how to build a team and find success. The Chiefs are is like you need a good defense, especially a good defensive line, And overall, you need a good defense, and the Chiefs have a fantastic defense. And they have a fantastic offensive line and a great coach and a quarterback that can easily manage the game. He's more than a game manager. However, his weapons are so depleted that he can just easily manage a game. He's so good still, and he's so smart, and he makes clutch plays. And that's how you win games, and that's how you get to 6-0 with a horrible offense. They do add DeAndre Hopkins, so we'll talk about that for a sec. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins moves the needle as much as many other people think he does. I mean, he's not as good as Rashee Rice. He's pretty much as good as Juju Smith-Schuster. So I think DeAndre Hopkins goes in there and replaces Juju Smith-Schuster essentially. And maybe if Juju Smith-Schuster gets healthy eventually, maybe those two together can give Mahomes some production. But I think it's not going to change a whole lot for the Chiefs offense besides having a veteran presence who can catch the ball in clutch moments every now and then. I wouldn't be surprised if DeAndre Hopkins Chiefs rest of season average stat line is 4 to 5 receptions a game on 6 to 7 targets for 50 to 70 yards a game. And then every now and then he'll make sure he finds the end zone because he's pretty much the only guy on that team that can go up and catch a ball in the end zone at this point in all of their careers. So it's frustrating because you watch the Chiefs and their offense is terrible, and then they just continue to win games because their defense carries them and their quarterback's good enough to make clutch plays. So it's frustrating as a Broncos fan, at least. I don't know about the rest of the league. I think the rest of the league is annoyed with the Chiefs, getting annoyed with the Chiefs as well. But for Chiefs fans, it's fantastic. I mean, it's a complete 180 from 4 years ago when you had Mahomes throwing the heck out of the ball and guys just making plays all over the field. Now they don't make any plays at all, but their defense carries them in every game. So it's weird to see, but it works just as well. So they win all these games against very tough opponents to start the season, and they're 6-0. And now they're going to get a lot easier matchups as the second half of the season approaches. Moving on to the Jets Steelers, this is one of those games where it's so funny because the Jets are just a joke. Especially with the New York media and stuff and how many Jets fans are online. It's hilarious. Russell Wilson gets in here and just absolutely murders the Jets, and it's an easy win for the Steelers. We'll just touch base on them very quickly. I'll give my Russell Wilson thoughts, and then we'll trash the Jets for a second. Russell Wilson is a guy that came into the game healthy and motivated, and he's on a team that has a good defense and a solid running game and a great coach. What does that sound like? Well, that sounds like when he was in Seattle. So if they're able to continue to do this against teams, then Russell Wilson's going to look decent. He's going to look good. He's going to show flashes of his old self. So doesn't surprise me that Russell Wilson looked good in this game. I don't think he's going to have enough in the tank as far as talent to lead the Steelers to anything crazy in the rest of the season or take them into the Super Bowl. But he's a very competent quarterback, and so is Justin Fields. So it's pretty much they just take a guy that can throw from the pocket maybe a little better and put him into the game instead of a guy that has to scramble around to make plays. It's maybe just more consistent and more safe for the Steelers offense. Maybe helps them run the game with the running game out of the backfield with Najee Harris a little more. So you do like to see it if you're a George Pickens fantasy guy or a Pat Freiermuth fantasy guy. Otherwise, that game, although Russell Wilson looks good, it was against the Jets, so we'll have to see more. And you also have to take into account that the team is carried by how good their defense is. Moving on to the Jets, hilarious. They add Devontae Adams. You think they have all this hype playing against a vulnerable Steelers team with Russell Wilson making his first start since late last year, and they just get smoked. And it's not even close. I mean, Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers looked rusty, which is kind of surprising based on how long they played together in their careers. Definitely excuse built in there because Adams just got traded to their team and they haven't played together in years, but it is just kind of weird. You definitely thought it would have looked better. And then you get, you have so much talent with Wilson and Breece Hall, and the defense is supposed to be good, and they just fired their coach, and they're just still getting blown out in these games. They're 2-5. Obviously, there's a chance there that they click and stuff starts to roll for the Jets and they look better, but I just don't think the team's good. I don't think the offensive line's very good. I don't think the defense is as good as people thought it was going to be. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is as good as anyone expects him to be. He's just old. And now they added an old Devontae Adams. I don't think Devontae Adams is anything like he was 4 or 5 years ago. So I think there's a lot of fool's gold with the Jets, and I think we saw that, and we're seeing that through the first 7 weeks. Definitely enough like names and talent there to fix it, but like it's just a whole mess with the personnel they have and the player type of players they have there with Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers already like some of the most what's the word? Like emotional and radical players in the NFL. And then you have a new coach and Nathaniel Hackett's your offensive coordinator. It's just like, good luck, Jets. I mean, I don't really feel for you because you're the Jets, but there's a lot of good Jets fans out there as well. So good luck, seriously. Like it's going to be a rough season because of the expectations that team had. Moving on to Monday night, 2 Monday night games, which is weird, but we'll move on to the better one here with more to talk about first, and then we'll finish quickly with the Chargers and the Cardinals. So Ravens Buccaneers here. Ravens take care of business, and they looked like this game wasn't as close as the score was. I mean, the Buccaneers get like an onside kick late. They get some garbage time stuff late. I think the Ravens defense just kind of gives up late in this game, and they allow points to the Buccaneers. Let's just kick off the Ravens. I mean, they look fantastic all around. Their defense has holes in it. That's why the Buccaneers have 31 points, but it's still solid enough to where they're going to be good in the playoffs. And then the offense is just elite, and everyone's cooking right now. I mean, the running backs are cooking. Lamar Jackson's cooking. Zay Flowers is cooking, even though it gets banged up a little bit in this game. Rashad Bateman's even cooking. I mean, we got to mention Mark Andrews is even cooking now all of a sudden. Mark Andrews is emerging. I wouldn't get too excited if you're a Mark Andrews owner in fantasy. However, you have to get a little excited because I think he's taken over like that for sure. He's the number one target in the tight end room. There's going to be some games where it's annoying because you are going to see Likely and even the third string guy get some targets every now and then. But I think Mark Andrews is valuable because he's going to get red zone targets in the passing game. If Lamar Jackson is going to throw a touchdown pass, it's going to come from it's going to be because he throws it to a running back and they get into the end zone, or it's going to be to Mark Andrews. So he's playable again now. He's the guy I want in the Ravens tight end room if I need one of them. Otherwise, hopefully you don't have to deal with it still. Buccaneers offense looks decent this game. Their defense looks cooked and horrible. That's one of the biggest things for sure is the Buccaneers defense is so vulnerable this year. It's insane. And teams are just racking up points against them. Baker Mayfield started this game off hot. He looked really good. It looked like they were going to just put it on the Ravens there in the first quarter. And then terrible things happened to the Buccaneers. Obviously, they lose the game, but they lose Mike Evans to what looks like a nasty little hamstring injury. Sounds like he's going to be out for 4-ish weeks, 5 weeks maybe, until after their bye. And then the bad one, Chris Godwin completely dislocates, breaks his ankle, one of those ugly ones that his ankles turn the wrong way of his leg. And he's already had surgery. He's out until probably, I would assume he's out until at least, obviously, next season. He might even miss some games into the next season. I don't know. I don't really know how those dislocated surgery, you need surgery on them, ankle injuries usually take, but he's out until next season. With Mike Evans out, this team takes a huge hit as far as the passing game goes. I'm worried about Baker Mayfield for the next 4 to 5 weeks as far as fantasy value. It helps Cade Otton, and it helps the running backs because they're probably going to have to rely on them a lot more. And then maybe you get a young guy like Jalen McMillan getting in there and showing some life, and maybe an emerging guy. So fantasy-wise, it is going to be what it is with the Buccaneers. Their defense is bad. They just lost 2 of their best pass catchers, so they're going to be having to throw in a lot of games. So we'll see what it looks like with the Buccaneers. I mean, feel bad for the Buccaneers. Another team that I really don't mind. I'd root for if it came to it late in seasons, but tough game for the Buccaneers. Not only do they lose, but they lose a lot of their key players. Moving on, last game here, the Chargers and the Cardinals. This one's not very entertaining. Ultimately, was a good game with the score being tight, but Chargers kicked 3 field goals, and the Cardinals, Kyler Murray didn't hardly target any of his receivers whatsoever. So, weird game here. I just think both offenses aren't very good, and maybe that's wrong. Now I'm thinking about I think it's more of the Chargers offense isn't very good and their defense is good. And then I think the Cardinals offense is good, but their defense is bad. So like it was like bad against good in this game, and it just kind of evened out to like both teams were mediocre as heck. I'm happy the Chargers lost as a Broncos fan. I mean, they looked horrible offensively. They have to kick 5 field goals. That's disgusting. I'm pretty sure they had to kick 5 field goals, or did someone get into the end zone? No. Yeah, they had to kick 5 field goals. That's ridiculous. So, boring game. Cardinals deserve to win. They just made more plays offensively. I know that. Kyler Murray carried them to a win. They kick a field goal to win the game. I'm just trying to think of what I want to say about this game. What else is there to say? Chargers 3-3, Cardinals 3-4. Battle of the mids is what this game was. Boring game that not a lot of people saw on Monday night. I'm having a hard time talking about it. I mean, Justin Herbert and the Chargers offense, we know what they are. They want to run the ball. If the running the ball is not going to work, Justin Herbert has the ability to be good. However, I just don't think their weapons are all that great. So they're never going to have a large offensive output for the most part. And their defense is pretty good. They have definitely, because their defense is good, they have a decent chance to fight for a playoff spot late in the year. The Cardinals have not a very good defense. However, their offense is good enough to score some points. So if they get just subpar or like competent defensive performance, the offense will be good enough to keep them in many games. They are 3-4 with a tough division. I do see them trying to fight for like a wild card spot later in the year. So both teams that have inconsistencies about them, some holes in their teams. However, they have a lot of good talent as well and some good coaches, and there's not all going bad. I think it's just 2 mid teams who are going to be – it could go either way with both. Personally, as a Broncos fan, I respect the Chargers because they just beat us a couple weeks ago. So I think the Chargers are decent for sure. I don't think they're all that great. Like, Jim Harbaugh might have them there. Is it Jim or John, by the way? I think I messed that up in my last week's reaction. I think they got John Harbaugh. I have no idea between John and Jim which one's which, but I think Harbaugh's a good coach, so maybe within the next couple years he'll have them in like a true contender kind of window. Hope that doesn't happen as a Broncos fan, but I could see that happening. They look like they have some good pieces and a good coaching staff there. They just aren't there yet with this year's team, so I wouldn't be surprised if they end up missing the playoffs this year. With the Cardinals, I think that it's the same thing we already talked about with them. I don't know what I'm trying to add to the Cardinals situation. I don't think they're ever going to win a Super Bowl with their current like defense and their current situation overall. I'm even a little skeptical on Kyler. I think he's a very fun and solid quarterback. I just don't know if he's a guy that's going to win a Super Bowl. So definitely not the seasons overall for both of these teams. There's still a lot of season left, so we'll see what happens. But I think there's no other way to end this video and end this reaction with this game other than saying, like, this game was a battle of the mids, and the game was super mid, and I would not expect anything more than mediocre from both of these teams rest of season. So that's going to be it for this one, guys. I think it's a little bit longer, but I really enjoyed talking about this last week's reactions. We'll see what comes of Thursday Night Football tonight between the Rams and the Vikings. Should be a fun game with the Rams offense getting a little healthier. So we'll see what happens. But once again, if you like or liked the video or found it entertaining, please like the video, and then feel free to subscribe to see more. Comment any fantasy football questions, any start-sit questions you have for Week 8 as we get into Week 8, and or just want to comment anything else. Otherwise, that's going to be it for this one, guys. I appreciate you watching. Peace out.